Do you love the outdoors and the idea of backpacking, but you don't know where to begin? There's a lot of things to consider, but I'm here to tell you, backpacking is easy. And today, I'm going to give you as many tips as I can think of to make it a little bit easier for you. Let's hit the trail. My name is Tim Buckley, and I'm an experienced backpacker and hiker. And in today's video, I'm going to show you a step-by-step basic guide on how exactly to take the leap and go on your first backpacking trip. A good way to calm your nerves is simple logistics. So when you go out, you want to start by obviously researching the area you're going, finding out elevation, water sources, camping options, etc. Also, permits if necessary. Along with all that, you want to really think about navigation. This trail is really well marked with these red blazes, easy to follow and difficult to get lost. But you're going to want to bring some navigational tools, including a paper map, and in today's modern world, a downloaded map on your phone is probably going to be your most useful tool. But remember, bring some of those old school things like paper maps and compasses if you know how to use them, just in case. State forests, national forests, wildlife areas, generally speaking, do not require any type of permit, which means you can just park your car, hike into the backcountry, find a good place to camp, and no worries. But if you're in national parks or certain areas, state parks and things like that, you may have to get a permit. You may even have to reserve a backcountry campsite. So again, back to the research part of the trip planning, make sure you're looking into that. The goal shouldn't be to cover as many miles as possible. It should be to get comfortable with the pack on your back and get familiar with the gear, just the overall setup of what it requires to be out in the backcountry. It's also important to research the wildlife in that area. A lot of people get overly fearful of that, but I think if you do your research and comfort yourself with statistics, you'll probably feel a lot better. Today I'm in black bear country, which would probably be the only predator I would have to worry about, but attacks are extraordinarily rare. But the most dangerous part is definitely not being attacked by a black bear. Weather is variable. Never trust the forecast, but it will give you a good idea on where to begin in terms of what kind of quilt you're going to need, what kind of clothing you're going to need, all of those types of things. But if I had one essential piece of advice to offer, always have something to keep you dry in case of unexpected weather like rain, thunderstorms. That may be a rain jacket and rain pants. It may be an umbrella, whatever that may be. Be prepared to potentially get wet, or if you bring the right gear, stay dry. We're not going to get into the specifics of the particular trail I'm on today, but the trail I've chosen is the type of trail I would recommend for beginners. I'm doing a 4.3 mile loop, and through my research I discovered that a lot of it is along water sources, in this case streams. And I just know from hiking this area before that there are campsites all along the way. I'm in a state forest today, but in state forests, national forest, oftentimes there are campsites basically built by backpackers. And despite the fact that it might seem a little unethical, it's actually good for the environment because then people camp there and don't just build camps all over the woods. Well, in a perfect world. Hiking boots or trail runners. We're not going to dive into the specifics of that, but I will give you this advice. Heavyweight footwear does make the hike tougher, especially if they're long ones. But it's not necessarily a knock on boots. If you hiked in boots before on day hikes, you're really comfortable in them, you don't feel good in a pair of good trail runners, start with boots if that's what you're good with. If you're a trail runner already and you're getting into backpacking, I'd suggest starting with trail runners. And another piece of advice is if you can find something with a little wider toe box, you're gonna appreciate that advice, because it really does cut down on blisters, especially if you're doing a lot of downhills. The old bug in the eye trick, huh? My own private island. So you'll notice I got my feet wet because I'm an idiot. Well, let's unpack some gear. Now, the first thing I'm pulling out here is unnecessary. But at my old age, it's a luxury item I bring. And there are more comfortable options, but this is a simple stool that sets up real quick. This is a Hilltop Packs frameless backpack. So this I bought after being into this hobby for a while. I find them to be more comfortable, but they don't get really comfortable until you get your weight down to, and I'm talking total weight, not base weight, total weight down to probably 25 pounds or less. Frame pack is going to be a little more comfortable for the heavier weights in my opinion, but a frameless pack when you start getting ultralight is where it's at for me. It weighs about 21 ounces, I think, if I remember correctly. And if you get a big framed pack, they can weigh up to 5 pounds. So really research that weight before you purchase it, and consider that 4 pounds is a heavy piece of gear, at least in the backpacking world. So let's start with the outside of my pack. I've got this big mesh pocket. I usually carry things I want to access easily. And one of Hilltop's handy little items to keep your stuff clean or dry are these welcome mats. And then on here I also carry a windbreaker or rain jacket. And lastly, on the outside, I keep my water filter, and we'll show you more about that later. Flipping the pack around, I've got padded shoulder straps and a hip belt. We talked about the hip belt already. It helps just balance the load, put some of that weight on your hips versus your shoulders. I have a few simple accessories. Number one being this microfiber cloth. I use this for sweat, snot, anything you can think of that's pretty gross. On this side, I just have a water bottle holder so I can grab that when I'm hiking. It's super convenient. I usually carry a vitamin water or Gatorade or something, and when I finish this, I use this for my powdered drinks, which you'll find is pretty common in backpacking. And then on this little mesh pocket, I have my bear horn and just a couple little doodad gadgets, including a fire starter and a little speed hanger. I'll maybe show you that later too. So I'll keep the bear horn near me. Hopefully we won't need that. All right, let's go to the sides. I have a trekking pole tent today, so these are the poles that I use instead of trekking poles. They're just a little bit lighter option. I don't usually carry poles, so I sprung for these. They call them Z-sticks. And I usually use this for water bottles, which I have on the flip side. Just a 1 liter smart water bottle. I knew I'd be camping at or near a creek. I've never heard so many acorns fall in my life. I'm gonna get beamed. It's time to dig in. This pack is just a roll top pack. There's lots of different things. Some have what they call a brain, which has a pocket for extra things. I think the more you backpack, the more you'll find you don't need all the bells and whistles, zippers and extra pockets and things like that. They're fail points, and they also add weight to the pack. Let's talk about how to pack your pack. We're not gonna go into deep detail, but it should be lighter stuff in the bottom, heavier stuff right in the middle or in the middle of your back, and lighter stuff again on top. That's just a general rule of thumb. So think like quilts, pillows, anything fluffy and light on the bottom, and condensable, so you can condense your pack better. Maybe your tent and your heavier hammock, whatever, in the middle. Usually your food bag, but I'm a cheater. I like to eat, so my food bag always goes on top. And on overnighters, I carry my cook kit right inside my food bag, and we'll talk about that when it's dinner time. Next, I just have a little down jacket for if it gets chilly tonight. So first thing I grab is my ditty bag. This is my poop kit, my meds, my trowel, all those types of things. Electronics bag. We are in the 21st century, so this is a pretty common thing to bring on a backpacking trip, contrary to the fact that you feel like you're trying to rough it. What is necessary in here is definitely this, which is my headlamp. You don't want to rely on your phone for a light source. Not only will it drain your battery, but it's not as strong and it's not directional like something like this that goes on your head, so that wherever you look, you can bring light to that if you end up hiking at night. Next, another Hilltop item. This is just a roll top dry bag. It says hammock sack on here, but for the sake of the video, And for the sake of you out there, I'm tenting tonight, even though it's not my preferred method of sleep. I brought the tent because that's most likely what you're going to wind up camping in or backpacking in on your first tries. And I put it in this dry bag because if it's wet in the morning, I put it back in here, I put it inside my pack, and then it doesn't get the rest of my gear wet. Just one of my strategies. Next, I just have an inflatable pillow, and you'll find out I brought two. This is my quilt and a real pillow in here. Again, I keep this in a dry bag. My pack is made of waterproof material. It is possible for water to get inside of this bag, so this is just provides some redundancy. It'd be highly unlikely, even in really, really heavy rains, that my quilt would get wet, and you don't want to get down wet. Tent stakes, don't leave those at home, folks. I think that's about it. Oh, my air mattress. So, let's talk about shelter. I grabbed my quilt, not my tent. Frankly, even though I'm a hammock camper, I would recommend starting with the tent because a hammock takes a little adjusting and a lot of research. And some people just don't sleep in them well at all, so give that a try down the road. But let me show you, this one is super easy. And tents are gonna range in price from $50 for your introductory Walmart Ozark Trail backpacking tent to up over probably $700. Dursons are going to fall right in that mid-range at right about 300 or maybe 350, but they do have an ultra light version that's like $700. And your tent weights are going to range anywhere from 1 pound to maybe 7 or 8. This particular one is 2 pounds, and with the trekking poles and or the sticks, maybe 2.5, and that's very, very light for the tent world, especially for the price that's not $700. And now to erect the tent. I said erect. If you carry trekking poles, you definitely don't need these. But I only carry them on really high elevation trips. Each door has an extra tie-out point. And for me, that's handy because often I'll sleep with this vestibule open, at least on one side, for ventilation. But maybe you haven't heard that term before, vestibule. Think of it like a tiny little porch. And it's this area. If I zip it up, I can put gear in here, and it's not inside the mesh part of the tent. Boom. So the tent is set up. Now how do you plan for sleep? Now there's a couple different ways, but first let's start by talking about a very important and nerdy number called R value. When is that relevant most? When temperatures probably go below 60 in the evening, depending on your tolerance level for cold. R value is an insulative factor. I'm not going to get into the science of it because I don't know it. But to keep things simple, anything under 4 is going to be probably 3-season tent. In other words, like you can go down into the 40s maybe, depending again on your tolerance level. This is an air mattress that is a 5.0, and I could probably take this below freezing, 32, in the 30s, and be comfortable. But you're going to want a layer of insulation below you, regardless of where you go. Not only for padding, obviously. It's much more comfortable to sleep on a pad, but the insulation is essential because most of the cold air is going to come up from the ground. And it doesn't matter how thick your sleeping bag is, you condense that insulation when you lay on it, and it's not very effective. So laying flat on the ground in a sleeping bag, A, is not very comfortable, and B, is not very warm. This Kilos gear is a nice budget option. I know it doesn't sound cheap, but they're about $150, and you're gonna get a wide 26-inch pad with a 4-inch, thickness, and it's just a very comfortable pad. But if I had one huge piece of advice to add to all of this, is spring for the wide pads right off the bat. 24, 25, 26 inches wide is far more comfortable, even though it doesn't seem like much, than the old school, basic pads, which are 20 inches wide. And some people sleep fine on them if you sleep on your back, but you're gonna end up buying more pads if you go for the cheapest and the skinniest pad right off the bat. So this is my pump. I could blow this up with my mouth. They come with pump sacks, or bougie ass people like myself will get a little pump to make it far easier. But way more obnoxious. So hopefully you can see here, it's pretty obvious. This is a one-person tent, so it is just as wide as my pad. So the actual inner tent in this Durston is just a bed. That's what the vestibules are important for. Now, if you're going to get a two-person tent, I have some wisdom for you that I think will be valuable. And that is, if you're going to sleep with a partner, or if you're comfortable enough to smell the farts of a friend, you can get a two-person tent. But there's some caveats to that. And the Durston two-person, the cheaper version, is 50 inches wide, which is really great because if you get two of these wide pads, which are becoming more and more the norm, they're going to fit side by side in that tent. A lot of two-person tents will be tapered on one end and maybe only 48 inches wide on the other. So that means that your pads are going to overlap, or you're going to have to suck it up and get the less comfortable, less wide pads. First, we'll start with my two pillows. Pillows are definitely a luxury item. Depends on how you sleep, but if you're one of those lucky sons of bitches that can just sleep on a rock, use a stuff sack, use your puffy coat, even your backpack. Some people go super minimal. Anything you can roll up and put your head on might be comfortable enough for you. But I do sleep a hell of a lot better when I bring two pillows. Now it's important to note, I have laid down to make sure there's no roots under here that are right on my hip, anything that hurts, or I'm not unlevel one way or the other. It's worth the extra effort to do that, simply because you will sleep better, and you'll regret it if you go to bed at night. You aren't going to want to move everything around. So there's a lot of reasons for a quilt. Number one, it saves a lot of weight because you don't have the entire bottom panel. Number two, if you have a nice insulated sleeping pad and you have this on top, you may get some drafts if you don't use it correctly, but if you use it correctly, it's going to perform just as well as a sleeping bag in most cases. Another huge factor is the bulk. This quilt is about the size of like a cantaloupe maybe, where a lot of sleeping bags are going to be more like the size of a basketball. Down is going to be your lightest and most condensable product. It is more expensive. But it is also probably the warmest option for insulation. Synthetic works great, but it is more bulky and heavy, and it doesn't insulate as well, quite simply. So let's talk about those numbers you see on these bags and quilts. There's usually going to be a temperature rating on them. The key component to look for is going to be the comfort rating. This one is comfort rated for 45 degrees. They'll usually sometimes have a survival rating too, which means you're going to freeze your ass off, but you won't die. So look for the comfort rating and then give as much wiggle room on either side of that as possible. So this being a 45 degree quilt, I know that I'm going to be pretty comfortable down to 45 because this is a good brand. It's from Enlightened Equipment. So just be safe and be conservative when estimating which quilt to not only purchase, but to bring on your trip. So you will find quickly that there are lots of different methods to filtering water. You'll find also that many backpackers use the Sawyer squeeze and a bag like this. This is by Canuck Outdoors. But now these bags come with a Sawyer squeeze. By industry standards, they aren't the most expensive. They're simple. And I'll show you a few ways to do it. But here's how you fill the bag. First of all, it's got this big wide bass mouth, as I call it for some reason. So it's easy to dip into a stream, which, by the way, running water is the best way to gather water. If it's moving, it's less likely to have contaminants. But first things first, you fill up your bag. And then you can filter in a couple of different ways with these. I'll show you. So here's method one. You simply screw on your Sawyer squeeze, and hence the name. You squeeze the bag to filter your water. And the second way you can do it requires a couple of items. One, this little coupler. This connects your Sawyer squeeze to a normal bottle, like a smart water bottle or anything. I can't remember the size, but that standard water bottle size. It's going to connect the two. I'll show you that in a second. The second is a string or some sort of device. This is called the speed hanger. You can get them at hilltoppacks.com. But it's really handy for a lot of different things, one of them being filtering water, the lazy man's way. All right, so you see that little crossbar, T-bar, whatever you want to call it, on the speed hanger. You're going to take this paracord, whatever you want to call it, hang that from the tree. Step one. Step 2, you're going to remove this unscrewable cap from your Sawyer and replace it with this coupling. I don't know what it's called. Then you're going to remove the cap from your smart water bottle, in this case. Also put that in your pocket. And drink the rest of that bottle so you can do this. So you got the knock bottle, and this is upside down obviously right now. So you're going to take that, flip it up, hang it from your speed hanger. There's a little loop on your Canuck bag. And you're going to see it's not flowing very well. You just want to unscrew the bottle just a little bit, and voila. Now I can walk away for a little bit while my water filters. Backpacking food does not have to be complicated either. These meals are expensive, and if you're balling on a budget, which I should be, but sometimes I cheat and take one of these with me, there's all sorts of options. Obvious things like ramen, tuna, anything with high calories to weight ratio. And there's even things like shelf-stable meatballs and barbecued ribs in the Walmart. At Walmart. I think it's like in the spam aisle, or like sardines and all that kind of stuff are. And they have like I don't know, 6 or 8 months shelf life, and they're delicious. That's a good one. As I am in black bear country, I'll be hanging my food tonight. My preferred method is the PCT hang, and it starts by throwing a rucksack up and over a branch, about 12 feet tall ideally. Remove the rucksack from the carabiner and replace it with your food bag, and then raise the food bag to the very top of the branch. You'll need a stick or a device like this called the dog bone, which eliminates the need for knots. The purpose of this device is to create a teed off section of the rope, which will catch on the carabiner once you lower the food bag. I'm not here to say all bear hangs are easy, but the benefit of the PCT hang is you don't have to tie it off to a secondary tree, and it just hangs from itself, as shown here. Ideally, the bag should hang 8 feet up and 8 feet out from the tree. To retrieve your food, raise your food back to the top of the branch. You'll now be able to reach the dog bone and remove it from the rope. You can now lower your food and remove it from the carabiner. Lastly, retrieve your string from the tree. I use these little Duraflame fire starters to start a fire. They make it a lot easier, along with a lighter, of course. But there's lots of different ways. If you get into primitive skills, look that up. If you want natural fire starters, think of like birch bark that you don't peel off of live trees, only fallen birch bark. But starting fire is pretty simple. Patience, oxygen, small, medium, large. So start with small kindling and get that going, and then add larger logs as you go. Good morning. We've made it through the night without incident. And it's 9:30 a.m., which is pretty darn late for a backpacker. But sometimes I like to not set an alarm, and on an overnight, I'm in no rush to get out of here. I just have to do the one thing I'd like the least about backpacking, and that's pack up camp. Late. I'm probably going to skip breakfast, at least for now. Maybe I'll eat on trail. Most people drink coffee. I'm strange. I rarely do. I like coffee, but I don't drink it on trail often. Instead, I'll bring like you can see this is red. It's a caffeinated powder from Dollar General called Pure Kick. And it's just a faster way to administer caffeine to the body. But coffee, if you're a coffee person, it'll take you a while to find an instant one that's decent. And some people bring drip systems if they're really hardcore coffee snobs. Lots of options in the coffee world. You'll have to research that yourself though, because I am too lazy. Let's rock and roll. Before leaving camp, one of the last things you're going to want to do is make sure that fire is out. Now you've got one more chore before you leave camp, and that is to make sure you didn't leave anything behind. Personal items, obviously, but more importantly, garbage. We didn't talk a lot about leave no trace. There's 7 principles. You're going to find that at leavenotrace.org. But some of the more common ones, number 1, leave your camp the way you found it, or better in a perfect world. Number 2, which is perfect, because when you got to go number 2, you got to bury it at least 6 inches deep. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Might sound silly since you're in the middle of nowhere, but it can damage the environment. Humans can run across it, and that really does not do a lot for your experience if you see human feces everywhere. At any rate, just bury the shit. Pack it in, pack it out, meaning all trash that comes in with you comes out with you. Those types of things. It gets more in depth, but again, visit leavenotrace.org. Leavenotrace.org? Leavenotrace.org. Last thing to do, hike back to the car. So I hope for some of you, this brought you enough advice to get you the courage or the information you need to take your first backpacking trip out on trail. If you do, nothing would bring me more joy than for you to comment how it went on any of my videos or find me on Facebook. But I love to hear stories about people's first trips, and the community of backpackers, we're all one big family. Hold on one sec. I've got one more tip for you when I get back to the car, which is right now. All right, for your final tip, and this is a doozy. Most trailheads are probably not parked next to a gas station or McDonald's. And even if you only did it overnight, there's probably something you're really craving. Mine is a beverage. That's probably the most common. And you will never regret bringing one ahead of time for when you get back to your car. Cheers. Bye.